Alright everyone, last week we took a look at how to load mods into our game. Today, let's take a look at how to create our own mod manager. So up on the screen here, you're going to see that we have a mod manager up here as an example. And this is kind of what I want to use as almost like a sort of template we're going here. And the one that you see on screen is Mod Organizer. If you have modded Skyrim, you probably know about that, or one of the other popular ones, such as Nexus Mod Manager or Vortex. So the main things we want to look at here is we can see we have a list of mods that are supported. All right, hold on. If I open this, there you go. Now you can see my mouse. We can say a list of mods that are installed, whether or not they're active. And then over here, we have the load order. All right. So those are going to be the main things that we're going to focus on. We want to include for our mod manager to at least work for our game, right? And of course, we can have it. We can have our own little setup for each little game, so we can tell it where the game executable is, where the mods folder is, and we can go from there. All right. So to start off, just like this tool, we're going to start off by creating ourselves a splash screen when our program loads. All right. So if you go ahead and take a look down at in the GitHub link down below, I should, as long as I remember, put a link directly to this project, and you'll find the splash screen. All right, my mistake there. I forgot that in 3.0 here, or rather 3.x, we can't. SVGs just come in as blank. Let's go ahead and delete that real quick. Where's this SVG? Right there. Delete. Go. Alright, so we'll be using PNG, so no re-importing needed. Unless you really want to remove the filter for it, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and do that myself. And in the link, there should be in the description, there should be a link directly to this GitHub project, where you can get these files here if you really wanted and didn't want to make your own. Alright, so just to show you there we go. That's all we're going to have here. We're going to have that show up on the screen. If you want to make that bigger, by all means, you can. See, we have different. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at how we can do our splash screen here. Alright, so we have two options that we can go about here. So you can go the easiest route, which is just going up in the project. We're going to set, come back here, we're going to set per pixel transparency inside of displaying window. We're going to set that to allowed and enabled. And if we come back to the boot splash, we can set the background color to an alpha of 0. And you can go ahead and set the image to your splash screen. And that'll give you the easiest form. As we see here, we have our quick splash, which you're not even seeing pop up, just because it's much quicker than OBS captures. So all you're seeing is the screen that comes afterwards after things load. Now, you can do that. You can do it that way, which is perfectly fine. But I'm going to show you the alternative way to do that. If you want to make your own splash screens. So I'm just going to use my engine boot image, which is just a blank screen, so you don't see anything. Also in project settings, I have this set to borderless by default. So keep that in mind. And I created myself a global script and loaded it in. Now, if you want to do it the other way here, we'll go ahead and we're just going to set getTree.getRoot.transparent_bg is equal to true. And you'll see here, or rather you won't, we have a completely transparent image, or a transparent window. At the end here, so all we need to do is do something like a texture rect, or you can do a sprite. I'm going to set this to my full rectangle and pull in my actual splash image as the texture. Set that to expand. Now when we run this, you can see we have our blank screen that the user won't see while the program is starting up, and then we have our splash screen here. The difference is the first one, the first way is going to hold until everything loads that it needs to load, and then we'll go into the project. So you have no control over that. Whereas this way, once everything does load, we're going to pull into our own custom splash here, and you're in full control at this point of whether you want to, or how long you want to sit on this screen, or if you want to bring in any load bars, if you wanted to do that, or anything. You're fully in control of doing that. So you get a little more control this way, but the other way is perfectly acceptable as well. So for me, I'm just going to use this route, and I am then just going to yield for 2 seconds using get tree. Create timer. I'm going to hold it for 2 seconds. And at this point, I don't have a screen that I want to change to. But regardless of what scene I want to change to, I'm going to set borderless to false. So now when we run it, we have empty. We have our splash screen after 2 seconds. The window will pop up. I know you guys can't see the window there, just because of the way OBS captures that. If I swap this over to display capture, oops, just capturing the wrong screen. If I go to display capture there, you can see the window does pop up, and if I play this again, just guess, you see, boom, there you go. So the window is going to pop up, which of course by the time the window pops up, we should be changed to a new scene. Alright, so we have our basic startup done there. Just transfer back over. So whichever route you want to go there, we have a splash screen ready to go. Let's jump into our next section and start setting up a game. If you want to set it so it always opens up in the center of the screen, you can certainly do that from here as well. Just right up here at the top, we can just do os.window, looking for the Windows position. There it is. Window position equals a vector2, and we're just going to set it by half your screen's height and width, right? OS. So now that we have that, you might notice that it's a little off, and that's because remember the origin of the window is going to be in the top left. So now we have to also subtract our window's height and width, or half of that. So we're going to get screen size divided by 2 minus our window size divided by 2. Now if we run that, we can see it's going to start right in the dead center of our screen every single time. And again, if I open up display, you can see it's in the center of my screen. Alright, so if you want to have it always open up in the center of your screen, that's how you do that. Alright, now let's move on to the actual, we're using Mod Manager there as our basic. So let me just go back real quick. So again, I'm changing my scene to the main scene here. And I have created my check files function to let me know whether this mod data file exists. If it does, we have at least one game already created. So it's going to return true. And if it doesn't exist, we'll return false. And then the add game here. Again, there's how it looks like. It's just a window dialog, 2 labels, 2 line edits, and a button with the window title set to add game. And then my main window here is based off of the mod organizer layout. So you see here we have our main scene, and that just consists of 2 color rects, one for the darker background here, and one for the lighter background here at the moment. And then I'm using a tab container to get that tablature look. And of course, you can always go into themes and change how these tabs and that look if you really wanted to. And then I have 3 tabs, each with a different name, one for plugins, one for saves, one for screenshots. Now, my splash is still set as my main screen. And we have one more script to add in, and that is on our main scene here. And you can see I just have a preload here for adding a game window, or the add game scene is being preloaded in, because you never know when a user might want to add a new game in, provided the game is supported, of course. And inside of our ready, we simply check, or performing an if check using that check file function that we created inside of our global script to see if that mod data exists. And we have this exclamation point here, so we're saying if not exists, so we're checking if false. So if it doesn't exist, we're going to add in our new game window by default. And I'm just making sure it pops up in the center, so if you were to run this from the very beginning, we see something like, boom, like this, like that. We move right into our main scene. We had our splash screen hold for a couple seconds, and since we have no file created, we are thrown right into add a game. Now, if you go into your add game scene, you can set your pop-up to be an exclusive over in the inspector, and that means that if I click outside of it, this window is not going to go away. I have to either hit add game, which will eventually close the window when we get to that portion, or hit the X button up here. Alright, so there's where we're at so far. We have our main layout set up. We just need to start pulling in our mods at this point and be able to start setting a mod load order to get our minimum functionality set up. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look. We'll jump into this lighter box here where we'll pull in all the mods that have been loaded in, or at least all the mods that are inside of the said mod folder that we're going to tell the game. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into doing that, which means we have to also add a game. Alright, so getting back to it, let's set our data information here. And just to catch you up a little bit, I did add an option menu here and a button so that we can select our game from the drop down and just hit the run button when we do get to that. For now, inside of our add game scene, we have a script on there now, and we just have 2 onReady variables to get our game path and mod path line edits. And when our add game button gets pressed from this window, we're going to check that the text of both of those line edits, make sure that neither of them are empty. And if both of them or neither of them are empty, then we create a new variable called game, and we basically pull the game's file out, or the name of the file out. So we take the text that's put in, we get the file, so that will give us like Skyrim.exe, and then with get base name, we've removed that exe portion, so we have just Skyrim. Hopefully that makes sense. We're just grabbing the name of the game based on the path that was put in. We then create a new dictionary inside of our mod data. And inside of that dictionary, we then create a new key called mod path and set that to whatever text passed in mod path. And then we create a new key for the load order, which we'll be using later. Alright, then if you want, you can go ahead and print out that data if you would like, and then we can call the new function we're going to create is global.saveData here. Alright, now over in our global data, now do note that mod data, I did change it to make it a little more sense, have a better name, mod data path, and we're now using a JSON file instead of an INI file, because I've realized while doing this that that was going to create an issue when it came to loading. Unless, of course, you only want to support very specific games. which of course obviously you're going to do, but it really depends on which route you want to go with that. And then how often you want to be responsible for updating the tool. So then we have a new variable called mod data, which of course is a dictionary. The only thing I changed in the ready function is I'm just calling my load data just to make sure everything works. I changed this from 2 seconds to 3 seconds, just aesthetically to give an extra moment. Check file is the same, and here's our saved data. So we create a new file. We open the file at our mod path, our mod data path. We're opening it with the right permission so we can actually write into the file. And we store line to JSON, our mod data, and close the file. For load, it's very similar. We're just going to use our check file function, make sure that the file actually exists so we don't get any errors. We're going to create a new file. We actually don't need this error. We can just leave it as f.open. And this time we're going to give it the read permissions so we can read what's inside of it. And then we're just going to set our mod data to the text that we're parsing from it and close our file. Alright, so now if we go ahead and open this up, let me just delete my old file real quick. We open this up and run this now. There we go. So we can see we have no file here. So we're ready to input whatever we want. And you can go ahead and grab your executables. And I'm just going to use the mod support that we did last week. Right click and get path. Just paste that in there. And I'll go for my mods folder that I'm using for that. And we'll hit add game. And we can see down in the output console, we have our dictionary set up. We have the name of it being called, in my case, mod support. And then we have a load order key inside of there, which is an empty array, which is we'll eventually use to tell our game what order to load everything in. And then we have our mod path, which, as long as everything is correct in there, should give us a folder for us to look at to start seeing what mods are installed for that game. Alright, so that works and everything perfectly fine. The last thing you might want to do is clear both of these lines and then close this window. So I'm going to do that. We're just going to go, now just take us into our add game here. And we no longer need to print that, but if you want, you can. And we'll just set the game path.text to an empty string. And we'll do the same thing for the mod path. Go. And then, so, Q for each, remove our window, which since it's already clear by default, I guess we don't need to clear it. Since it'll spawn back in as being cleared, we should just need to free it up. If we take a look at that, you see our file was detected, so we did not get our pop-up. So if you want to go in there, you can go ahead and delete that. Restart it, and you'll see it pops up now. And again, we can have whatever we want in here. Shouldn't make any difference. We can add game. Our data is put in there. Everything's just fine, and our window has disappeared. Alright. So the last thing I want to note here for setting this up is I am using just to make it look a little more professional, inside of project settings, application config, I'm using custom user directory. Just so that it doesn't pop under like Godot, user data, blah, 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 application, and then project name. Just so it just goes straight into the app data and then the project name. Just makes it look a little more professional looking. And of course, you could always use a custom directory name here if you would like. But that'll do it for that portion. Next, let's move on to listing out all of the mods that are installed in this directory. So that'll be our light gray section here. Turn that off. So that'll be this section here. let's go ahead and jump into that, and let's get our game added into our menu here. Alright, so to get our mods, the first thing I did is I realized I missed the mod section, so I came back and I added that for when we add a game. It's just an empty array, an empty list. For our global, I'm using essentially the same get mods function that we used last week. I just edited this one line here to fit in with our current code and current database that we're using. I'll hold our mods. And inside of the function, we're actually getting both the game and the path instead of just the path to pass in. That is all we're doing here for our global. Alright, so let's move on in. We covered that game, we covered global. So the next is going to be inside of our main list here. Now, what we're doing here is we have an else statement here. So else, we're going to load our games. So if we do have this file does exist, and clearly we have games, so it does exist, which comes into our else branch. We're going to load games, and that function we're just going to run a for loop, and we're going to say for game in global.mod_data.keys. So we're going to get all the games that are in that list, because remember each section is going to be separated by the name of our game, and we're just going to call our add game function. Now our add game function is this option menu here, which is our drop down menu if you remember. And all we're doing is we're getting our option button, we're going to add an item. That item is going to be the game name, which is the argument that gets passed in. And that has to be a string. And then we're automatically going to call selected or set selected to the item count -1. So this is always going to select the last item in our list, which will always be the last game we just added. So whenever you add a game, it's going to automatically be added to the end of the list and automatically get selected. Alright, so we then have to take a look at what happens when we select an item from our drop-down menu. Okay, well the first thing we want to do is we want to get the item name, because we want to find out if it's our add new game or if it's one of our games. So we're going to create a variable called we're going to create a variable called item name. And then on our option buttons, we're going to call get item text and pass in the index. So that's going to give us the text of the actual text that we selected from our drop-down menu. And we could do a bunch of if statements, but I'm just going to run a match statement here on the item name. And if it's add new game, now remember this is case sensitive. And I'm getting this from this what I set here as my default. And if that is it, then we're simply just going to instance in one of these windows, just like we did in our ready function. And if it matches underscore, which is just a wildcard, which is kind of like the else statement in an if-else chain, it's basically catch-all. So if it matches nothing, if it doesn't match anything up here, it's going to run this code, which is perfect for this situation, because if it's not add new game, then it must be one of our games. And we don't know what the name of that game is going to be yet. So if it's one of our games, we're simply going to call our getMods function, pass in the item name, which is the first argument here, so that's going to be the name of our game. And then we pass in the path that we want to open, which is going to be our mod data item name mod path, because we want the mod path specific to that game that we added. And then we're just going to run through a for loop of for mod in the mods folder, right? All the mods that are listed in there. Because we already ran our get mods, so that'll fill us out. So all the mods that were listed, we're going to run through the item list. If I come back to 2D here, I just have a scroll container that I placed in here. Just going to set those anchors real quick. So I just have a scroll container here. That way, if we go longer than this box, we can actually start scrolling. And inside of that, I just have an item list here. That way we're able to actually select it for when it comes to, if we want to rearrange things that way. You can, you certainly don't need to, but a lot of times you can. If you want to add right-click functionality, it'll be useful to know what you're selecting. So that'll prepare you for the future if you want to add even more features. So this is just an item list. And all I'm doing is I'm calling the add item. And we're going to add the mod that we find inside our mods list. And we're just going to get the base name because we don't need to know if it's a zip or a PCK. And as a result, when we load this up, you'll see here. So if I just come back here, if we go to add new game, we get our window. And if we select mod support, we get our mods starting to get listed here on the side. And of course, we're able to select them. They don't do anything at the moment, but that's always a feature you can add in the future. But there we go. We now have our mods being listed. Now, what about our load order here? Well, we can go ahead and access that. It's just going to be a matter of rearranging things inside of our load order list. All right, so let's go ahead and tackle that next. All right, let's get our plugins and that loaded now into our list here. All right, so by list, of course, I'm talking about our load order. That's going to be displayed here. We have our enable button, of course. We have our save load order button. And we're going to be dependent on what items we select here and hit enable on. So we're going to have to go into our item list here. That's going to hold these mods, or hold our loaded mods. And we need to make sure we enable or set select mode to multi. We're going to set that to multi. That way our user can select multiple items and enable them at once instead of having to go one by one. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump in. We start, let's see, our add game, we have no changes. Our global, we have no changes. So far, so good. The only changes we have is going to be inside of our main script. And I have another item list and scroll container that is for our plugin list, which is our load order. And I just have this set to a non-ready variable just so we can differentiate the two since I'm using the default names here. Alright, so we come on down and we get to our first section, add load order. Okay, well this is going to be after we have games already, or have mods already set up inside of our load order database, our dictionary. But all we're going to do in there is we're just going to run a for loop. So for mod inside of our mod data, game, and our load order. Then we're just going to access our plugin list, add item, mod.get base name. And the reason we're using base name here is because in our load order, we want the file extension because we don't know if it's going to be a PCK or a zip. If you want your game to only handle one of those types, then you can kind of get away with not using the base name there. But since in this case, we want to support both PCK and zip, we're going to just get the base name and not worry about any of that. Now, for adding into the actual load order, so we're going to go through our plugin list and we're going to grab that base name. And if that is inside our list of mods, which it should be, then we'll add that into our actual load order, our list of load order that our game can use later to load in. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a variable called PL for my plugin list. And for that, I created a function called getAllItems. So if I come down here, we can see that just takes a list argument. And that has to be from the item list class, and we're going to return an array. So for this, I create a temporary variable called item list that is an empty array. And I run a for loop for I in range of list. Remember, that's going to be whatever we pass in. Get item count, so that'll give us a number in return for the total amount of items. And we're just going to run through item list.append list.get item text and pass in that I that we're running through. And then we'll return that list. So that's what's going to get all the items in the form of a text, letters. Sorry. We're going to get it in the form of text instead of index. So basically, PL is going to hold all of the mods that we have inside, that we've enabled, basically. So for P in PL, so I'm just using this as for plugin inside of our plugin list. And then this is where we're going to check. So if it's %s, which is a placeholder, which we replace with %p. So whatever plugin name this is going to be placed in here. So if plugin name.zip is inside of our mods. Okay, and then we'll check if our plugin.zip is not already in our load order, then we'll add it into our load order. Else, if our plugin.pck, again, same thing. If it's inside of our list of mods for the game, and our plugin.pck is not already inside of our load order, we'll add it into our load order, and you can go ahead and print out your load order for the game, if you would like. Alright. So we can now add the load order to our game, or to our project, when our item is selected. From our drop down, a new game is selected, and we can add to our load order, which we'll use when the user clicks save load order. Alright, now our enable button is going to allow us to add our items here to our plugin list. We're going to create a variable called mod indices, and we'll go ahead and we'll get our item list, right? So the first item, that's holding all of our enabled mods, and we're going to call get selected items. Now, because we have multi-selected, we can have one item selected, we can have 12 items, 24 items, 36, 100, doesn't matter. However many mods that we have selected that we want to enable, we're going to get all of those indexes. And then for all of those indexes that we now have here, we're going to go through and set the mod. So the mod is going to be equal to the text of that index inside of that list. And then plugin list, we're just going to add the item to it. So if I just load this up real quick and show you here. Right, so right here, so if we have two of these selected, we hit enable, we're going to get the indexes of both of these items. And then for each of these indexes, because remember, this is going to give us a list in return of all the different indexes, we're going to get each item. So we're going to see, this is the first index here, so we're going to grab this, and based on this index, we're going to get this name, which is going to be icon-green. And we're going to add that item into our plugin list here. And then same thing, we'll move on to icon.red. If we had them both selected, as you see here, we hit enable. And that's great. That puts them in there. However, we do need to change this around a bit, because obviously our load order is going to be different. Or ideally different, and not in order of the enabling. Of course, you could just leave it in the order of enabling here, but it could be a little messy or a little annoying if you have a lot of mods and you have to go back and re-enable and disable and create disable buttons, which we probably should have a disable button in here as well, which will just remove the process, or you can just invert the process with that. And then our save button there, when that gets pressed, we're simply just gonna get our game. And the way we're getting that is we're going to get our option button, so our drop down. We're going to get the item as text. And for that takes an index, remember, as we just went over. So with that, we went over that with item list, but it's the same thing here with the option button. And what we do here is we need to get the ID, so we get selected ID, and that'll give us the ID of whichever item is selected. So with this, we'll always get the currently selected game, and then we'll call add to load order, and we can pass in that game name. If we go ahead and run that, and we hit save, we can see nothing happens there, but from add to load order, we are printing. So we can see our order is completely printed out there, perfectly fine. And if we save it multiple times, you can see in the output again, we're not adding multiples in there. If it already exists, we leave it there. Alright, so now we've added into our load order. That just leaves us with the ability to rearrange our mods. And of course, we should automatically load these in when we select our game. And a disable button. And then we have the base here of creating your own mod manager, and from there you can add into your own features. So let's go ahead and tackle that section. Alright, so hopefully nobody gets confused. What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and add load order and pass in the item name here inside of our wildcard here for our map. Just in case somebody is a little confused on where they're supposed to put this. So we're just going to stick it in the wildcard there. Now if you'll notice, if you load that up after you've saved everything now, also make sure to call save data on your save button here. So you might notice that when you come in here, you see we now have duplicates here coming in. And every time you save, that's going to keep growing bigger and bigger. So we actually need to make a small change up here inside of our get mods. And before we append, all we have to do is simply just check that file name is not already in there. So we're going to say if not file name in mod data game mods. So if that mod isn't already in our list of mods, then we'll add it. Otherwise, we'll just end up skipping it, and that should fix that situation. So if we load this up now, come in, there you go. We only have the 2 items here still. And again, we go to enable because we had our check in there. Oh, we still have 2 greens. So we can fix that. It's going to be in our main. Enabled right here, add item. So again, we just perform a simple check here to see if this mod has already been enabled. We can check if mod, because it's going to be the name at this point, and we want to check if it's been enabled. So, alright. So we just create a new variable here to hold our active mods, and again, we're using that get all items function that we created, passing in our plugin list, and we're checking if not mod and active mods. So if it's not already active, then we'll add it to our plugin list. Simple as that. Again, just a simple if check. I just felt like I should probably put those in case somebody was really confused on why they're getting doubles or how to fix that or where to call certain things. Alright, let's move on to the next piece that we need. Alright, so to deactivate a mod from our list and remove it from our load order, we're going to create a new function. Sorry, not create a function, but we're going to connect a signal for our plugin list for when an item is activated. We're going to get the mod by plugin list.getItem text and pass in the index. We're going to then get the game like we did before, so we're going to get the item text based on the selected ID in our option button. And then we're going to check if that mod, either in zip or PCK format, is inside of our load order, and if so, erase it. Alright, so what I'm going to do after all of this is I'm going to go ahead and print the load order, just so we can see it before and after. Right. So we go in, we load up. we have our new game, we have our mod support, we already have icon green. You see it's down there, it's a zip, we double click it. You can see that it's now removed out of our load order down there. Now we have to remove this from the list as well. So we're going to have to go into our plugin list. And we're going to remove the item from this list. And we're just going to do that with remove item. And we just, simply pass in the index. Now we're doing this on both of them, so we could easily just call it on the outside, but we don't want to do it in case it's not part of the load order. We don't want to erase it. So let's go ahead and take a look. You know what? Maybe we will want to do that anyway. So that's going to be one of those choices that are up to you. So we take a look. We save. We have green in our list. Double click and it's gone. We save. There's nothing there. So now we come in. We can enable red. Save. And now red is the one that's being loaded. And we can double click it and it's gone. Alright. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull that out. So I think I actually want to delete it regardless. If it's in that list, and if it's not in our load order, then it's probably because we haven't saved our list yet. So that might actually incur a bug if we don't. Now if we're to add green, I can remove green. Whereas if we had it like this, I think green might have caused an issue and not have been deleted. So let's take a look. Green, and would that have worked? Yeah, see, that wouldn't have worked, so that would have introduced a bug. So with the way our thing is currently set up, we're definitely going to call that outside of our check. There we go. Now all we have to do is take a look at reordering our load order into different, moving things higher and lower in the priority. To change the load order of our items, all we have is I just add an up and down button here on the side. And what we're going to do is when either of those buttons are pressed, we're going to get the items by getting our plugin list and get selected items, just in case we have multiple items that get selected. We then need to also get our game, and the amount of times that we're getting a game variable here, we could probably just refactor this and move or create this game variable at the top and then change it when a new game is selected. But that'll come down to refactoring and up to you and what you want to do. Not necessary, but will look nicer. And then for both of these, we're going to run into a for loop. So we're going to get our plugin list. And we're going to call move item, which will allow us to take things from one index and put them in a different index. And when we're moving up, we're going to move it from its original position of I. And then we're going to move it to I minus 1. And when we're moving down, we're going to move it to I plus 1. Alright, so that's going to move it visually, but not in our load order itself that our game would use to load. So we're going to call var mod, so we can get the actual mod that we're popping out here. We're going to get our load order, and we're going to call pop at, which is going to return the name of the item at that index, which will be I, because it should be in the same order as our plugin list. So we're going to get that item at that index. It's going to remove it, and it's going to assign whatever that is to the variable mod here, which is going to be our mod name plus either a zip or a PCK. And then all we're going to do is we're going to insert a new item. So we're going to go into our load order and we're going to insert, which allows us to place a value at a specific index. And we're going to place at I minus 1 when we're moving up and I plus 1 when we're moving down. And the value we're going to pass in is whatever mod is that we popped out. Alright, so now you can move up and down in your load order, both visually and in your data, and remember to save at any point. You can put save in here at wherever you want these saves to happen for your save data. At the moment, I just have it on our save data button. And I think that's all we need to do here. Although, let's go ahead and quickly address this situation here. So when it pops up, we have mod support, but nothing here loads. So let's go ahead and address it. Alright, so let's just go ahead and pass in. We can call add load order after our games have loaded. And the big string that we have in here, or the big piece of text here, is again just the game variable that we've been setting this entire time. So if we call that there up in our ready inside of our else after we load games, let's take a look what happens. And there we go. We have our plugin list loaded here, but not the mod list. So we have to go ahead and take a look at that section now. And then we'll be done with the mod manager portion. Then we'll just have to make some tweaks into our game to actually use our mod manager. Now, we're actually going to remove that add load order because I just realized we're going to have a duplicate in there because we're actually calling that inside of another function that we can call. And that's going to be our on option button item selected. So our function down here from when we selected a game from our dropdown, we're just going to call that, and we're going to manually pass in an index, which is the index of whatever item is selected. Now if we load this up, let me take a look. There we go. Everything automatically gets loaded in for us. Alright, so now we can move up, we can move down. In our load order, we can enable, we can disable. You can play around with different things here, like once you come in here and you can enable, and you can get the index of this and change the foreground color or background color to a green for enabled if you wanted. That way you can see at a quick glance if that's something you wanted to do. Saves. Oh, these are need to be tucked into the tabs. So let's do that real quick. Go back to 2D. All of this stuff. Gonna be our scroll container. Our buttons all here. Not enable, not save. Right, so minus those ones, we're gonna take those ones. And I'm just gonna drag those up into our plugins tab. Back up here. Just like so. And I've got to reset my sizes here. Go. Item list hopefully will be set fine still. Although my path is going to have an issue now. I'm going to have to update my path. It's going to be up here. Hopefully that was the only issue. If not, then alright, there we go. And now I can go to my different tabs here. So saves, wherever you have your game saves located at, you can create another information there. When we added our game, you can have your saves, the location of your saves, and you can list them out here if you wanted. And screenshots, you can give the option of having a screenshot section and then loading in those external images to view here if you wanted to do that. So, again, those are just extra features you could add that are not mandatory for a mod manager, but are useful in the long run, or can be useful to players. Alright, so we now have a mod manager that works. We just gotta set our run button to actually run the game here. And then we can jump into the game and set it to actually load up based on our mod order. Alright, so to get our run button going, I went back to our add game and I added in a section for our game path that we can keep track of. And that's just going to be set to our gamepath.txt. We're getting out of there. And for our run button, simple, we just get the game and we call os.shell_open and we just pass in that game path. Now, running this from the beginning, let's take a look. We can come in here, pass in the path to our executable, we can pass in the directory of our mods. We can run add game. And if we double back there, we can see that loads in. So we're just going to have to call for our load there in the beginning there. Let's go ahead and we hit run. And there we go. And you remember this is our mod support that we did last week. Only it's blue because it doesn't have any mods loaded into it. Alright, so now let's head on over to that project so we can get it to run the proper load order. Alright, so to show you guys it working, I'm going to go ahead and hit my run button. We see we have red loaded up in our plugins here, and red is the one that works. Let's go ahead and enable green, so we have red loading, and then green is going to override it. Oh, I forgot to save my load order. There we go, green overrode it. And if we take green, move it up, red should be overriding the green. I'll save that. And as you see, our mods are now working as we're running everything from our mod manager. Now, to get our game to work with our mod manager, we're going to go into our game here. Okay, so you see at the top, we have mod data and mod files, two new variables. Mod file is going to be os.getUserDataDirectory, split it at Godot, because that's just the path that I have. I'll get my first half and add on mod manager /mod data.json. So you want this to be equal to whatever your mod manager's data location is, which we're doing it this way because the user data directory is going to be different for everybody, and you might have to tweak this for each specific platform. I haven't tested out other platforms, so you might have to tweak that. But here we go. We also go into our ready function next, and we create a new file. Check if our mod file exists. So if we have a load order already set up from our manager, then we're going to open it up, parse it, close it, and call our new function load new mods. Load new mods is just going to get our game. Again, by default, if you're running it in the editor for testing, you can use the second one here. And all that's doing is setting it to a string of the name of your executable. This top one here, you can only use this after you've exported your game. If you run it in the editor, it's going to get the Godot editor executable. And obviously that's not what we want. When we export it, it's going to give us our executable name, which is what we actually want. And we have our path here, which we're just using to shorten this down a bit, which is going to be the path to our mods. And then we run our for loop like we did before for m or for mod inside of our load order. We're just going to go to our project settings, load resource path, pass in path, plus our slash, plus the mod name. And you can go ahead and again, just export that, overwrite your old one. And now back in your manager, we can run that. We have our mods here. Just hit run. And there we go. We have red loading. And we move that down so green overwrites it. Save our load order, run, and now green is working. So we see our mods perfectly working. And now we have a functional mod manager that we can hand out with our game to freely allow people to start modding our game, as well as keep track of a proper load order. Alright, I know this was an extremely long one. I hope this was very informative for you guys. You have a brand new tool that you can now use. And you've provided your community for your games the ability to mod your game and use a mod manager, keep track of the load order of your game, and if you add more features, like your screenshots and saves, then you're just adding more and more ease of use or user-friendliness to the one playing your game that wants to take it that extra step and add more features with mods and all that. Alright, take care, have yourselves a good one. I hope you guys appreciate this. This was a long one to do. It took quite a few hours to go through. I have an hour on the recording there that I got to cut down. But, alright, take care, have yourselves a good one.